Good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and call our April 18th Airport Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Jason McMullen.
Here.
Micah Thomason.
Here.
Joel Gardner.
Here.
Jim Ulmer. Steve Smith. Greg Collier.
Here.
Cameron McCarron.
Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Any questions, comments on the minutes from last month? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right. Comments from the audience. If anyone would like to come up to the podium, you have a maximum of 5 minutes. Daniel, update from Summit.
Good afternoon, good to see you. Just real quick on the numbers for March. Up 20% on jet, which was more than our fluctuation of 11 to 13%, so that was great. Really like seeing that. Feel like we're continuing that. So far for this month, as of today, invoiced gallons, I've already done 30,000, just over 30,000 gallons, and we're just over halfway through the month. So I'm hoping that translates into, at the end of the month, we are seeing, I don't know, if we see 50,000, I think that's going to be a big win for us. And the same thing with avgas, you know, that general fluctuation, but we're already at just over 5,300 gallons halfway through the month. So again, if we see good weather, another 5,000 gallons, that's 10,000 gallons. That's really good for avgas. So Springdale, Northwest Arkansas, we're doing something right. It's a lot more activity. Based aircraft are taking a lot more fuel at home, taking it other places. So we really like seeing that. There are a couple of things. First, I want to address kind of the big thing while I can think of everything. A lot of you have come out and seen the FBO, and we've walked through, and I've given you a rundown of what we believe, we being Summit, Cameron. I've walked through with Laura and James at one point to look at the rooms. What I'm proposing, what I like to start off with is the sitting room that everyone approved Cameron to, or the office, everyone approved Cameron to glass in at the last meeting. I approached Cameron with an idea. I asked him, what if I take that room and I provide you adequate and comparable office space somewhere else in Hangar 11? And he was fine with that. He just wants an office that he can have a little bit more private, do a little bit more bookkeeping and secure everything. Summit, with your approval, would do the glassing in of the office, and we would pay rent from the first month of occupancy at whatever rate the commission deems appropriate. Again, Cameron was great with that. That got us onto another conversation of, with my redoing of the upstairs room into a private lounge, where Cameron is currently doing his bookkeeping, that's going to displace them, and he wants to find somewhere else for them. So what we were hoping to do was move them down into the center lounge on the north end of the building. I've got this labeled as lounge/office, currently lounge/will be an office if you approve. Turn that into an office and allow his reception, his executive assistants to be able to go into that room, keep their bookkeeping in there, do a lot more work right next to one another. Their customers can be better taken care of, we believe. The lounge that's currently in that room would then go to what is now the vending. That vending, even though it is a smaller room, I would redo that room to clean up the drywall, because I've got to remove a few things. Clean up the drywall, move seating in there, move a TV in there, make it comfortable. That vending would then go into the northeast flight planning room, which currently, as you saw, has some recliners, and people do tend to fall asleep in there, and then as soon as they do, everybody wants to go out that door. So removing the lounge aspect of that and turning it fully into vending, I think it would be more appropriate. We've got so much foot traffic through there anyway. I've got my coffee prep in there already and keeping flight planning in there, some flight planning. Doing all of this would allow me to put my accountant into that new glassed-in room where she currently runs 3 businesses. And she's in a small room. She would like a lot more room. It would be a lot easier for her to organize. And so moving her out of that office, I could move my line shack, the guys doing the operations every day, into her office and have a direct view of the ramp, a lot better idea of what's happening actively rather than being behind my office and I'm communicating to them sometimes when they can't hear small planes coming up. You know, there's then no excuse. They're going to see the aircraft coming up. This is what we would like to do. Mr. Smith, I think you're the only one who wasn't able to come out and take a look at everything. I would like feedback. I would like to request that, that you allow me to do this, make these changes, but I want your feedback. I want opinions and guidance from, you know, as a tenant of this airport as well.
So just to clarify, all the space that we're talking about shuffling here and there, the only public space is actually as you walk in the airport to the right where we're talking about glass.
There would be, that's public space. The central lounge that we want to turn into an office is currently public space. Vending and, well, all 3 of those rooms right there are public. Yes, everything's public. So this would transform that sitting space and that central lounge into office space.
What other options do we have for camping? You guys thought any more, other than what you've got here, from a standpoint of rather than going to Hangar 11, I don't have a problem with that. That seems an easy fix for him, and shuffling everything else around. Are there any other options we're not using public space already?
I haven't explored anything. There might be a few options. He's got an office in one of his hangars over there, but that's slated to become a testing center. So if they moved into that and then get approval for a testing center, then they're going to be back at square one of we still need some office space.
What I don't want to happen is we convert public space to office space on a permanent basis. And obviously, we do this before the police. It's going to be good for the police. I don't know what the future holds.
Right. Right.
Questions?
If I may, one question for Daniel, that is the line shack room, what is that going to become?
It's gonna still be a line check room. We've got a refrigerator for catering in there, and it's where I keep a lot of my quality control record keeping.
And then just to add on to your commentary, Mr. Chairman, we did not have that concern last month when we went ahead and told Cameron that he could go ahead and take up this sitting space and turn it into office space. We didn't have that concern. What has changed?
Nothing's changed other than the square footage that we're looking at giving away. I mean, that office space there I have no problem with, but you got 3 more potential office spaces that we're looking at that we're going from public to office.
And I will say, just as a reminder, the upstairs lounge is being created, which is substantially larger than what we would be losing downstairs. And the typical patrons of those rooms, all of them will have access to that room upstairs.
That's a good point,
It's
yeah.
much more private.
Daniel and I, Daniel and I talked about this whenever I was at the airport, taking a look at his suggestions. And if we're going to do these things and have them approved, then I think that the entrance to the catering needs to be addressed, and might as well do that now instead of waiting for the refrigerator in there to break down, and then we have to tear down the drywall just to get that thing out and do whatever we can with it. It's doing that at the same time with everything else would not be a major stretch of construction by any stretch of the imagination. I would like to see that done and taken care of instead of doing all this and then another 6 months to a year, whatever, that thing breaks and then they've got to tear everything down and go through a couple of month process of just getting that thing out and reusing the space. So in addition to the things that you suggested, I would move to go ahead and do that now while the other things are going on. See what the cost would be, if any, to the airport, and just get that done and out of the way and not have to worry about it again.
Well, I could, as far as removing the drywall, if you allow me to do this, I will foot the cost for altering that wall where that catering room is just off to the right. So then in the future, when a fridge dies, the city won't have to worry about it. I'll have already done it.
And in the glass partitioned area that we're talking about to the right, we're going to potentially put the glass wall up, and you're also going to have a door to open and close. So there's going to be no opening to get in there other than a closed door.
Correct. A lockable private office.
In essence, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul here, it looks to me like, on all of this. And I think everything seems to be an upgrade.
I think so, in that I feel it makes the terminal more usable as far as flow, what rooms are used for what currently and what they could be used for going forward. It makes sense to me in that way, mainly pulling a place where somebody can fall asleep and have high traffic. Now, the only option for them to fall asleep is going to be a nice, quiet, secluded room. That's, in my opinion, that's, other than me gaining office space for my accountant, that's going to be the direct benefit to the customers and patrons.
Laura, I'd like to get your thoughts.
I think it's a good idea. I think that office there is going to look really like we're an airport terminal. And then the room that he's speaking about turning into an office, that room's going to be moved into what's now the vending room, so we're not really losing just a little bit of square footage on that public space. That'll still be public. There's also another room down that hallway that has no windows or anything, so people do go in there and sleep from time to time. And if this all happens, I'd like to put better signage, because right now people don't really know where they can go. So if that was an office, you would know it was an office when you walked in, and then the other rooms are down the other hallway. And vending would be then in that corridor room back there where the flight planning goes on, and right now people don't realize where the vending's at. A lot of times they'll have to ask. So that would be accessible. So many, the people on our airport go through that corridor. Maybe the sales on that will go up from that too.
And I'd be happy to pay for the signage.
Years ago, our pilots lounge used to be up on the second floor, and pilots seemed to enjoy that better for the fact that they had a view of the ramp, so they could see when their plane was ready to go.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. I think that room that'll be nice to have them up there.
I agree.
So really, you're asking to shift the use of a couple public spaces and then take some public space and make it an office for Cameron's administrative assistant.
Correct.
And we'll be leasing that space to Cameron.
To Cameron.
Oh, we are going to lease it?
Oh, I'm sorry, the central office on the north side to Cameron, the lounge on the south side to me.
So we're asking if you're asking to move a couple things around in the public space to make it, that we all think is going to make sense, to not have a walk-through in the middle of our lounge. And you're asking to lease, last month, the commission approved changing a sitting area that's open to an office, and now you're asking for a second office to be created on the north side there for Cameron.
Correct.
I guess my opinion is that it's making the space more usable. The public spaces remaining public space is going to be more efficiently used. And the office space, we're not getting rent for that right now. There's a need for it. We are the landlords. We can make the decision to take that back if we need it in the future, Greg. I think that makes sense that we may need that in the future. it makes sense to me that we do this. And we're not having to delay, we're not basically not getting rent for it like we were in the previous plan for the time period. I don't think we had the number quite yet, but it's immediately going to be rentable space. So I think it's better for the commission this way.
I've done some research on that, and I talked to Daniel a little bit about this. I think a fair rate on that for that office is $250 a month, based off the square footage and going rate. I think that's a very fair.
So using that math, what would be the new office on the north side of the building? What's the square footage there? Can we use the same
It's a
math
little-
to determine it?
It's a little smaller than that. I think, is it 12 by 12?
12 by 12 or 12 by 15, maybe. Somewhere right in there.
I'm not following what your question is with that.
Last month, we agreed to lease the space that's currently a sitting area as an office, and we weren't able to establish the rate. $250 sounds like a reasonable rate to me. Now they're asking for an additional space, and we need to come up with a rate for it as well. So if we can use the same math you used to come up with the $250, let's do that and figure out what the new Cameron's Administrative Assistance Office would be, and let's settle all of it right now and let them get started on improving our airport.
What do we say that space is to the right? It's 12 by 15, right?
In the corner?
As
Or-
you come in, that we're enclosing.
I
Okay.
think that's 16 or 18 feet wide and maybe 12 deep. It's kind of hard to guess without being there.
I didn't bring any of that with me when I measured that and looked at that, but,
The meeting last month, Cameron said it was 12 by 16.
okay.
That's what Cameron said. He said 12 by 12 and then corrected himself later and said, no, it's actually 12 by 16.
I never measured that other room. I just kind of walked it last couple of weeks ago, whenever that was. I'm going to guess it to be a 12 by 12 in that range. So we're pretty close to the same dimensions there, a little smaller, obviously. I would think $200 a month would be a fair price for that.
Ready for a motion? Okay, I make a motion that we allow Summit Aviation to go ahead and start construction and that we approve their plans to turn two different spaces, the space on the south end of the building that's currently a sitting area, into an office with a glass wall as described in the last meeting. And also the middle lounge on the north end of the building to turn that into rentable space for Cameron, and then increase rent for these two spaces for $250 for the office that will be occupied by the aviation, and $200 for the office space that will be occupied by Cameron.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Collier,
Yes.
Ulmer,
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Go to work.
Thank you very much. I'll get started. And with that, I will also include cleaning up the vending room after I rip the counters out of there, and signage. And I will make an access to remove the refrigerators when they die.
Let's do it, just so it's clean.
Okay.
So I'll make a second, or another motion that we allow Summit Aviation to use the public space as they've described, vending being swapped to the lounge area and the original vending area being used as a lounge. They're going to do all of the renovation and paint it back with the same colors that we currently have the walls in there, do the drywall repair and whatever else they might come across. And no additional charge at all to Summit Aviation, just improving the efficiency of our airport.
I second that motion.
Motion and a second. Let's roll call that, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Collier,
Yes.
Ulmer,
Yes.
Yes.
All right. That motion passes as well. Any questions to the commission, Daniel?
No, but I do have one more thing. I've asked
And
for,
Daniel, before you move
Yes.
on to that, just out of stupid curiosity, start to finish, you're looking at how many days?
I need to reach out to the gentleman who did the quote that, for Cameron, figure out the timeline for that. As soon as I know the timeline, I can pass that through to you. And I will do my best to stick to that timeline for the changes on the other side of the terminal.
Very good, thank you.
I think last month it was 30 days, is what he said, for the glass portion, and then the other, I'm sure, is kind of within that.
Probably, yeah. Okay, the resolution I've asked to be added into my section. I haven't seen this in years, and it got away from me, and I have simply forgotten. I would like to address it. It is the resolution regarding ramp fees. I will start them up immediately, making sure that payments are getting to the city. And I want any feedback just regarding this topic. Like what do you want me to do? Is there anything else you want me to do?
Well, one thing in looking through that and going out to the airport, looking at the planes out there as well, 20, 25 planes probably normally sit there. How many of those planes are getting their fuel from us?
A substantial amount. At least half are flying, the other half are in repair. There's none that are really static and decaying. There's maybe 10% of the aircraft that I simply don't know who they belong to.
Oh, you don't even know who?
No, I really don't regulate that into the ramp. It tends to literally not be worth my time to figure out who it is, what they're doing, and charge them. And the charge at the end of the day for whatever that might be, I've spent more in man hours like collecting all the information. And so I don't have to handle those aircraft. I'm not providing them any services. I'm not going out of my way for them, so I'm not charging them anything. It's attractive because it allows somebody to utilize that space. There are some other questions, like, if they're selling aircraft and using that space, are they making money off that's something for you guys. And I know Laura brought that up as well, and it's a fair question. But again, I try to stay away from that simply because it's literally not worth my time, and from accounting standpoint. What I tend to work with, anybody who comes directly onto my ramp that I park on my lines, that I'm doing services for, I'm handling, I'm moving them, I'm putting man hours into them, I'm gonna charge them. And that's only if they stay overnight. And that's only if they don't buy fuel. And there are a few times a month when that happens. And so that's that fee that I would need to be passing through.
I don't have anything in my packet, so maybe I'm the only one that doesn't know, but
Oh,
can you kind of back up a little and tell us what AP-9-02 is?
I'll just read this first paragraph. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Springdale Airport Commission for the City of Springdale, Arkansas, that the Airport Commission hereby authorizes the following fees to be charged when the required minimum fuel quantity is not purchased, with a requirement that the fixed-based operator pay 25% of all ramp fees collected to the to the Springdale Municipal Airport Commission each month. And there are a list of fees that go down here. But a lot of these fees I've changed over time. This is from 2009. And so the fee structure is just, the world's different. And so we charge a lot different numbers. Excuse me. And here's the copy. So you can see the numbers right there.
I think initially when we brought this up, James, you may remember better than I, but I think what we were trying to accomplish with this was to basically get some rent for these aircraft that are just sitting on our grounds and not benefiting us any. I think that's where the whole conversation started.
Yeah, they
Right.
fly in, stay all day and hang out in the terminal all day and then fly out that evening and not pay for anything. But yet use all of Summit's food, coffee, time.
Right. Whereas people on that north ramp, again, I might not see them, and they're buying self-serve fuel, or I'm pumping fuel into them. So I'm getting something that way. The city's getting float fees that way. But I think it was, like you said, it's for the people, the larger planes, the King Airs and things that are coming in and saying, oh, we don't need anything, and we don't require anything. You don't have to get anything when you come with us. But if you stay a day, you've taken up that much space for 24 hours. the city's gonna need something, we were gonna need something. And I think that's where it started originally. And where I've gotten off is I've not paid that 25%. I've simply forgotten. And I saw this years ago, and then it left me.
So you are collecting some fees, but we're just
Yes.
not passing the 25%?
Right.
Okay.
I have a line item, so I know exactly what that number is.
How much is it? Do you know?
Not offhand.
Okay.
I knew it the other day, but for this month, I think it's a couple $100.
Daniel, do you know by chance how our fees compare with the other airports in our region?
They're favorable for us because we don't have any minimums, we don't have any handling fees, and we waive the first night often when they get fuel. So whereas Fayetteville has a minimum, I'm not sure what it is. And this is information I've gotten from Mark because he does go to these other airports. Fayetteville, Rogers, they've got minimums or handling. It falls under one of those to where if you go there, you will need to pay something or buy a certain amount of fuel. And we just don't do that.
So are you just saying you realize the issue, we're going to fix the issue, and going forward, it'll be corrected?
Yes.
You just wanted to let us know
I
that's
wanted
what's
to
going
bring
on?
it to everybody's attention, yes. And so, repent of my sin.
We don't need to make any changes on anything. We're just getting back up to date here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think what we started talking about was that part of the ramp has been more storage. It's a buy and sell lot. So these people are parking planes there until they sell and not paying the city anything. He said they do buy fuel because they do have to fly them periodically or test flights or whatever they do. So they do contribute that. But other than that, it's just free storage.
Yeah. Some maintenance at my maintenance shop, they'll get things done here and there, pre-buys and annuals. So there's some tax revenue coming in from those, and then a little bit of flowage fees.
So we're working off of a document that's 15 years old?
Yes.
Do we need to actually sit down at some point in time and update this document to what the standard practice is today?
Sure. I don't know if I would have pricing in there because pricing can change, but it would probably be healthy to revisit it.
Well, then why don't we next month, I'd like to see the pricing that we currently have.
Sure.
So if next month we could have the original 2009 agreement in there, and then let's see if we can't write it without the pricing in there, and know what the pricing is currently. If the pricing's going to change, let us know that. But and maybe that's all we say, is that they just have to update us if there's a price change on it. That way we're all back on page with it.
Yeah, and I can send you this week, I'll send each of you individually an email with my current pricing.
That still doesn't resolve the fact of the aircraft that are sitting there that we're not collecting anything on, and not really trying to collect anything on. Where do we go for that? To me, at least, they're just sitting out there reaping the benefits of not having to pay rent and leaving aircraft sit there for however long it may sit.
Right. The way I reconcile it is that the majority of those aircraft are purchasing fuel. And at the end of each month, it's a few $1,000s worth of fuel. And so I'm getting my revenue that way. I'm not having to keep tabs on what aircraft are flowing through, or being bought and sold, or creating accounts for an aircraft that might only be there for a week before it's sold or just goes somewhere else. Again, that side of it, I've got so many man hours into the accounting of that side of it, where I'm already putting man hours into invoicing fuel that's being sold. So I've got an income off of one side, but I wouldn't necessarily have a matching income off of accounting for all the aircraft.
Do you see it as a problem? Does it mess with you at all?
Honestly, no.
I mean, I think, I like the way they structured that in 09, because basically we reap the benefit when you reap the benefit, and you're there every day and know what customers you need to be charging, which ones are taking advantage and which ones aren't, and who's buying fuel and who isn't. So I kind of like the way the agreement is right now. If it's an issue, you guys have issues with this at all? I mean, I hate that they're taking advantage of the system, but sometimes it's not worth our effort or man hours and cost to go after it. And if they're going to do it, I mean, it's going to, if that's become the normal for what they do there, it's going to take a big change for us to make a difference there. I don't think it's going to be worth a whole lot of money to us.
Sounds to me like we're trying to step over a dollar to pick up a dime.
Yes.
So did you say half of those aircraft
Yeah, probably about
buy
half. of them
gas there?
Are buying fuel, yeah. The other half, maybe 30% of the other half are being worked on to be resold. And then, the last 10 or 20%, I simply don't have any idea. It's not worth my time. If it was worth my time to do some of them, it would be worth my time to do all of them, and I just don't bother.
How hard would it be to take every 6 months snapshot of what's going on, how many planes are out there, what planes are there? If we have the same offender for more than a year, then we address the issue, but otherwise, we kind of give them grace for the first year. Otherwise, we have planes just parked there, maybe in who knows what repair, and we're just storing a junkyard out there, and obviously we don't want that, and that might be worth, if we come up with 2 tail numbers that have been sitting there a year, then maybe we can contact those particular people and tell them that we can't store a plane here.
Yeah, I was going to say 6 to 9 months to a year, at least, something in good faith. Because I do know, going over to Sam's, that there's a backlog of planes trying to get in and get worked on and things like that. But, whenever you go to the airport and you see the same plane in the same place month after month after month, you kind of start wondering what's going on. And if it's a situation like we talked about in the last meeting where there had been a plane that had been in a state of repair and not being touched, that hangar's just taking up space that somebody could actually be using. So I was going to say something between 6 months and a year if there's not, that plane still sitting there tied down or not tied down, not moving, then something, it needs to be addressed.
I'm not sure it's Daniel. I think we have to just see how many planes are there? 20, 25 planes? We should be able to write down tail numbers, and 6 months later, if the same tail numbers, call them. Oh, you made a face. Is that not? That'd be hard. Man, I'm not trying to make this hard. I want to make sure we've got a plan that's going to work.
It would work, and for the most part, I know who has the majority of the planes there. They're not necessarily in that person's name because they're trying to sell them, so.
Texarkana would push them under the pine trees and just leave them alone, forget them about it.
Okay, I'm fine with not doing anything. I just feel like we're missing an opportunity to collect some rent from them, but you guys, yeah, it may be, as Joel said, step over a dollar to make a dime. Maybe that's true. Let's just kind of watch it then, Laura and Daniel. And if it gets out of control, if we're seeing, to Micah's point, the same aircraft there long periods of time, then we probably ought to address it.
Right.
And once we start doing some work and we have to move them, we're going to have to figure out another location or how we're going to park them.
Right, and you run into, if you find any more aircraft that are sitting in hangars and they're just decrepit and will never fly again, those aircraft are going to be on the ramp, and then they will be an eyesore. And, that would be my biggest concern, is an airplane sitting out there rotting away where somebody can see it, or somebody else who's got, ambitions, parts disappearing off of that airplane. But anyway, that kind of second thought for me. That's all I've got. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you so much for allowing me to do the work that we'd like to do. If you have any questions, come by, call anytime. Happy to talk to every one of you.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
So just to recap that, we're going to look at the 09 airport policy at the next meeting and rewrite that, make a change to it so that we can update it without pricing and make sure keep the same general thought with it, because I think we like the thought, but we can discuss it at the next meeting. And that we're just going to, we kind of said, I think I said a year, Jason said 6 to 9 months. Greg said a period of time. We want to define exactly what that period of time is. We'll look at it every 6 months and see what planes are still there, and it gives them 6 months to sell them, and otherwise they're kind of overextending.
And if they're very long, I'll probably have created an account, and I can look to see what their flowage has been.
Think of a plan for these planes. Because if we find planes that aren't working, we've kind of started that precedence that we're going to be moving those planes out. If we find that, we got to figure out what we're going to do without having a bunch of junk planes sitting around. I know one or two probably at the end of the world, but if we have 15 planes out there that are all falling apart, it's going to look like a junkyard rather than our airport. If you're out there, you know what to do. I would just think through if you come up with a plan for us.
I'll put it on my mind, yeah.
All right. Ernest isn't here, but he, well, we'll just come to his when we get to you, James, okay?
Okay.
Ernest couldn't come today, but he gave some notes to James. Laura, airport operation?
Yeah, so to speak for Ernest on those 2 hangars, we did put paperwork on them, and he sent paperwork in the mail to those people that they would be vacating by the 30th. The 1 hangar has been empty pretty much since our last meeting. Mr. O'Neill went and pulled his plane out and kind of vacated that hangar. So on the 30th, that should be rented without a problem. And then the other one, I haven't seen or heard from that gentleman, but he has until the 30th of April.
My understanding is that he's a missionary and is out of the country and is maybe not able to make those arrangements. I think I talked with Daniel. Daniel acted like he might be able to pull that out and put it on the apron for us somewhere. Apron, the right word.
I can do that, it'll take some work, but
Yeah, Daniel and I spoke about that in the beginning too, and we'll figure out how to move it out so that we can rent that to someone that will fly and hopefully buy fuel and all those sorts of things. So that's kind of our next project too, to figure out how to do that one if he doesn't come and claim it. As he does do mission work, but he was home and did sign the letter that Ernest sent him. So he is aware of it,
And he has until the 30th? He's
Correct.
paid up until the 30th?
right, then back to last month, also the stair treads, he said those are on back order until the end of April because they had to special make the size that we need. So hopefully somewhere around the end of this month, beginning of May, they'll be able to get install going. And the tower radios have been installed and the controllers are really happy with them. They still have a few more requests. I don't know if James was going to talk about them today or not. See what we need to do with that. As far as the late fees, I've talked to most everybody. I think my computer's been not working the last 2 weeks, so it's been tough. But I've tried to get in contact with pretty much everybody.
Questions for Laura?
Yeah, the list of the rent, I'm having a hard time reconciling that back to the hangar list. Like there's, like the number 1 hangar, there's no 001 on this list. There's not a, I don't know, several of them. Might be a no 107.
Yeah, they use like a customer number. They don't use our hangar numbers on there, so it's just the name.
How can I do that? How can I look at the name that we have here versus the rent list?
I could send you the hangar list and then you, is it?
the hangar number?
I think some might have, but I don't think all of them do. I can't remember. That's what I usually do. I usually pull up my hangar list on my computer, which I haven't had access to in 2 weeks, so I'm trying to get that fixed too, but,
I mean, I've never counted, but it looks like it even fluctuates how many hangars are on this list month to month. And I don't know if it's just because of the ones that are not due and the ones that are paid are not on here at all. Like if you're looking for hangar 001, there is no 001 and I see his name down here now, okay? I think there's more of a missing than I'm seeing here. So if you, when you get your computer back, I'd love an email for how to take the list that we were given last month for who owns the hangar and what tail numbers are in there. I'd like to be able to compare that back to the list of who's paying rent or I guess the name on the aging report is the name of the person that has signed the lease. And the name on this, it should be the same, or does that mean this could be someone that owns the airplane?
for the most part, they're the same. So there could be some discrepancies that we are unaware of, and it does show some hangar numbers on there. But I think the way they do the books downstairs is why we have.
Customer ID.
It looks like we have so much on the list, which is, they're not always, because she prints it off early too. So some of the people, if they have auto pay, it probably gets taken out quicker than somebody that maybe mails in a check or brings it by.
Is that the city clerk's office?
Yes.
I may just ask for her to send me that then, because she should have a sheet with all of that, probably an Excel she can kick out.
Well, after their names too, it has their hanger number out to the right. And then some of them has it out to the left as well. So the ones that doesn't have hanger numbers are usually an office space or something like that. A storage unit.
Yeah, but that's why you're not seeing 100 names on there, because I think some of the people's goes through the system quicker than others.
So this is the people that are still due or within that range still. It's not a complete list. That's why it fluctuates. Okay. Yeah, I want to get a complete list on that, so I can go by the city clerk's office and ask.
Anything else for Laura? James, activity report?
All right. From following up on what Ernest said, Summit has signed their extension, so that has been complete for their FBO agreement. So that was done, along with those 2 hangars. As Daniel led to, the fuel counts is up along with traffic. Our tower manager says we're the busiest tower in Arkansas, so we've outdone Little Rock, so our operations are doing real well. And like Laura said, our radios are in. The only problem is they didn't have headsets or mics. So we're working with Tom to see if we can get those added, because you would think that that would be required with new radios. But Mike was not happy that they didn't come with it.
So are they doing sign language? What are they doing up there?
They're using their own ones, and they're not doing very well, so. Tom's supposed to be getting us a number to, the grant should still have plenty of funds in it to cover those, get them added in, so we'll make him happy by the time we're done.
No indication on when that'll happen?
Tom should be getting me some numbers real soon, but the radios are up there and working, so the guys are a lot happier. The recorder's working, so we're back in compliance for the FAA. It's just a few little quirks that we gotta work out.
All right. Anything else, James?
That's it.
Questions? All right. Greg with Garver.
Let me see if I can get this plugged in. There it goes. All right. So I'll start with project updates. We've got the 2 projects ongoing right now, the Powell Hangar reconstruction project and then the runway rehabilitation and grooving project. The Powell Hangar project I'll start with. They were able to get started with construction, and so I've got a few pictures here that I can share with you. They started about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, putting up some of the steel, and it's a 60 calendar day construction time, so we're about, what is that, an eighth of the way through it. Let me see if I can zoom in here. So you can see the steel's up, and they also have a lot of the site cleared, at least the topsoil cleared off the site. The surveyors were out today staking the location of some of the detention pond and some of the other pipes and paving that's going to be going on out there. And so they're moving. The hangar doors expected to be delivered, I believe they said, in about 10 days, the 28th of April. And so they'll be making progress, but the only item that I think is lagging a little bit behind is the water and sewer extensions, and that's because we're just having trouble getting Springdale Water to get a pre-con set up, and so that's going to be the critical path on this project is getting that phase of things started. But other than the water and the sewer, everything's moving along. Any questions about the Powell Hangar project? Great. So the only other project is the runway rehabilitation and grooving project. I don't have a whole lot to update on this one. Right now, we're kind of just waiting on the FAA to tell us when they're going to be ready for us to bid it. However, there was an announcement about 2 weeks ago of an additional funding opportunity that the FAA made available. It's like a lot of the other grants that we've been applying for, it is competitive, but I think the project, the runway rehab is a good applicant for this project. It's a safety-related project, and it's on the runway. If you remember me saying previously, they like to work on the runway outwards. So hangars, aprons don't tend to get as much funding, but any project on the runway does get a priority. And so we will apply for this grant, but I am going to talk to them about how that's going to impact our timeline. It may be one of those things where we might have to delay until an early fall construction duration just so that we can receive the grant and potentially get construction started rather than a late summer construction. But if we do get this grant award, what that allows us to do is spend some of that, those AIG funds, that COVID relief money, on something else. And so the more money we can get from the FAA from this bucket of money, we can spend their other money somewhere else. So I'm planning on applying for that and talking with the FAA program manager about how well we will compete. And with that information, I'll use that to kind of decide when we're going to bid the project.
Kind of walk me through the timeline there. If we don't think we're going to be competitive, then we'll go ahead and do a late summer. But if we think, and you do currently, you've not seen anything that makes you feel otherwise, that we're going to be competitive with it, then we may delay the project to fall.
Correct.
When will we know in there to do that?
So I'm planning on calling the FAA here in the next week to have the conference. Once we get the application together, I'll send in the application. Applications are due May 2nd. I'll send in the application, ask her how well, based on some of the other applications that they're getting, ask her how well she thinks we'll compete. In the past, she's been pretty transparent with me about, after all the applications are in, whether we're going to compete or not. Generally, they have a good idea of what they're going to do at the start. And so hopefully that first week of May, I'll have an idea of what that timeline looks like. But our two options are we could bid it probably in early May and have bids opened in June and construction starting in July. So July construction would be the absolute earliest. And I would say if we do get this additional funding, they were saying we won't hear about the grant being awarded until August. So it might be an August-September timeframe for construction. August and September don't bother me, but if we get into October, November, those longer nights and then also cooler weather, that would kind of make me nervous about doing this night work heavy project. So to answer your question, I'm hoping to know probably that first week of May.
Craig, do you think that the delay of the runway project might interfere with the typical traffic that we see from the university football in that September, October timeframe?
Yeah, that's actually a good consideration that I hadn't thought of until now. I think it could have an impact. However, we still have the ability to control when those closures are allowed. I know for the taxiway extension project, we knew that could potentially be ongoing during that fall season as well. And so we only allowed closures, I think, Monday through Thursday night. And so we can do something similar for this project as well.
What's the max funding on that?
1.5 million is the max funding, and this project's estimated around 800,000 or 900,000, I believe. And that's another reason why it fits nicely. Like I said, it's a runway project. It's safety oriented with the grooving. A third thing is it's already been designed, so it's ready to go. The FAA doesn't like to award funds and then wait 2 years for something to happen, and so I think they'll like that it's a project that's shovel ready, is what they call it.
Anything else?
No other updates for me.
Questions for Greg? All right, thank you,
Awesome.
Greg.
Thank you.
Old business?
Yeah, I had a couple items I wanted to talk through. In the last meeting, we made the decision for the the hangar that had the airplane in it that was no longer under operation for us to, I believe the way it was passed was to take possession of the airplane. I don't think we want to take possession of the airplane. I think we need to take possession of the hangar and evict them, and then let whatever the city process is for evicting things. Taking possession of the airplane can make us liable if we put the airplane out on the apron and there's hail or theft, anything like that. I don't think the city wants to take responsibility for, we as a commission don't want to take responsibility for caring for the airplane. So I know it's just a difference in the way we're worded, and I don't know how, you may know how to do that better than I do, Joel, but I think we should reconsider how we worded that motion. If we can go, I don't know how we go back and change that, but I think we need to change it to where we're not taking possession of the aircraft, we're taking possession of the hangar. Both the recording and the minutes both show it as possession of the aircraft. So I think we need to change that wording a little bit so we're not held responsible for something that happens to the aircraft after Daniel's group pulls it out onto the apron. The other issue I wanted to go through is that I know that the Flight Club, and it's been really complicated with ownership of airplanes, and it was spring break and I wasn't able to be here to be able to speak to it. So since it's old business, I was going to say, the way the Flight Club, when we discussed it, not in the March meeting, but in the February meeting, the way we discussed it was that the Flight Club were equal owners of those aircraft. So being 12 members of that aircraft club, they are all 1/12 owners of all the aircraft, is the way it was explained to us in the February meeting. So I think we're setting a dangerous precedence that we have evicted someone that is a 1/12 owner of an aircraft in a hangar, because there are lots of our aircraft that are going to have quarter shares, half shares, eighth shares. There's going to be more of these situations that come up. So I do know, I watched the video, and I do know that when Mr. Crabtree was asked about it, he said that he did not own an aircraft. It's a little more complicated than that, in that he is part of a flight club that owns aircrafts, and therefore he owns 1/12 of the aircraft. That was the decision that we made in February at the meeting, is that because the gentleman that was here was part of the flight club, he still owned an aircraft. It was kind of a gray area. So we've kind of decided both directions. So I don't know how we are going to proceed with this, but if we look through the list and we find tail numbers that a person owns a percentage of the aircraft because they're sharing it with 4 of their friends, is 20% enough that we say, okay, then you have the right to have the hangar? Because if it is, then I don't know where we divide that line at. I just feel like there was a percentage of ownership for Mr. Crabtree. I think the way he wrote the letter to Ernest was his not understanding kind of how the flight club worked. And obviously he worded it the wrong way in that letter, so I think we should have gone through the issue. But I think we've set a precedence here that if we find there's an aircraft and the person that signed the lease owns a quarter of that aircraft, is it any different than owning 1/12 of the aircraft? I don't know that we are able to set that line.
Well, I think it came down to, and potentially will come down to, if they do not come to the commission to transfer ownership of that hangar to whatever party it may be, then they void their lease agreement.
So no one has come before us in the time that I've been on this commission to do that. So if we find anyone that owned an aircraft and they said they'll sell half their aircraft to their friend, we'll keep the hangar, they're in violation as well, and they will be evicted as well. And come to us and say, actually, the arrangement's changed. I'm no longer an exclusive owner of this aircraft. I'm now a part share of it, and I need to explain that to the commission, because no one has done that. Not once in the 14 years I've been on this commission. There's a break in the middle, so 12 years with 2 years off in the middle. Not once has that ever happened. And the Flight Club is a similar situation. He owned the aircraft. He still has access to fly that aircraft. It was even more clear to me than the previous month's decision that we made, where the gentleman wasn't medically certified to be able to fly anymore, but had access to fly and was a part of that club. Mr. Crabtree is part of that club, paying member of that club, has access to those aircraft as well. I think there's probably some legal concerns with just mentioning it to Tommy Lee and how split shares go. And he knows way more about this, and we probably need to have Ernest or somebody that understands it better. But there's concerns if everyone owns an aircraft, if the flight club owns it, then how is it insured? And my understanding is that you're not able to get like insurance to cover the deductible. So if I'm a flight club member and I crash the plane, the deductible's out of my pocket, but I think they're probably getting some deductible. They're probably getting some insurance to cover the deductible if they crash the plane that's owned by the flight club or they damage it in any way. I think there's probably going to be an insurance look at this as well, which may make it much more clear in black and white to us who owns the aircraft, who's insured that owns the aircraft. It's also the same thing, the flight club, if they get in arrears with us on rent, are we going after 12 people? Like, there needs to be a person that's responsible for the rent. Like, we don't rent with 12 people there. We're really renting with a single person. And that gentleman, Mr. Crabtree, probably would have been the person we would have sent Ernest after for any back rent. I can see where that needs to be brought before the commission. I think it's grayer than we're making it. And I think that we'll find 50% of the aircraft are share owned out there, and none of them have come before us. So are we going to kick 50% of the people out? No. I don't know if it's case by case. It seems like we made a decision. He didn't own an aircraft and he owned an aircraft.
I would like to say from my standpoint, the fact that it was Mr. Crabtree that said that he gave his hangar to somebody else to pay, and that other person tried to start paying it. If Mr. Crabtree just kept on paying the bill, I don't think we would have known any different. And if that's the case that's setting out there right now, where the hangar's been under your name for the last 10 years and you keep paying the bill, but I'm now part owner of the aircraft, I don't think that is an issue that can be brought to us and say that you gave the hangar to me, because you didn't give me the hangar. And that's where this one, and with Mr. Crabtree, when he stated he gave the hangar away, it wasn't his to give away. It wasn't a quote. He transferred it to Mr. O'Neill 2 years ago. And then on the other one, I would rather take possession of something than custody of something, because if I take custody, I have to take care of it. If I take possession of it, I can do with it what I want.
That was Ernest's words. That was Ernest's words on taking possession.
Sorry, my legal mind isn't there. I don't know that stuff. I just wanted to make sure we weren't. When I saw that, I go, ooh, we don't want to be responsible for the airplane. So, agree, but he sold it to something else he's a part of. He's a 12th owner in this, because we talked about it like shares. It was you own a 12th share of this flight club is the way we described it on the February meeting. So yes, he did that, but it's kind of the same scenario you're saying. He sold it to himself, renamed it, but he owns a 12th of that airplane just like he did before. So he is still an owner of that. He still has the ability to lease it. And you're absolutely right. If he hadn't written the letter to Ernest, or if he hadn't tried to have somebody else pay it and then have Ernest, but so somebody that doesn't understand who's supposed to pay it, so if someone understands how to pay it, we're never going to detect this and we're not ever going to see it, they're still wrong. It's either subleasing or it's not. Who's paying the bill has absolutely no bearing on the subleasing. So if the only way we're going to figure this out is if someone's dumb enough to pay a bill for somebody else, we're not able to figure it out. So, and we've had one person. There's a bunch. I really feel like we're going to find there is a lot of subleasing. I couldn't possibly buy a plane unless I have a spot to store it. I'm not going to put it out on the apron. And I can see where that's a big hindrance to selling them, but people buy and sell planes all the time. I know people do put them out there, but I think if we really are digging into this, we're going to find there's a lot of fishy business with this, and zero of them have come before us. So I don't know if we need to come up with some consensus on how we view this and publish it and send it in our monthly statement to them, our bill for the month, or a rent bill. I don't know how we do it, but no one has talked to us about this. I know we can say they're naive and that they were ignorant of it, and that's not except that does not give them cause to break the rule. But no one has done this, and we're going to find it is repeated over and over and over again if we look into it.
Well, we've had people sell their aircraft and just assume that the hangar went with it, and we correct them. We don't bring it to you, we just deal with it. So if someone sells their aircraft, the hangar doesn't go with it, so they move their airplane out, the next owner moves in. We don't bring it all to you, we just deal with it at the airport. So we've had it happen numerous times.
Vacate the hangar, and they go on the hangar, the hangar list is used, and we fill that spot.
Correct.
But they don't necessarily tell you if they sell the hangar, or sell the aircraft. It's not always said.
Right, sometimes we find out secondhand.
Because when we started this back in December, January, my concern was they're paying $151. They've sold their aircraft to somebody who's now giving them a $500 check every month, and they're turning around and spending $151 of it here and putting profit in their pocket. That's the over abuse of the situation that I was concerned about. I don't know. I mean, I think if we're saying that anyone that, I don't know how we fall on this, but I think we've voted two different ways back-to-back months on this, and we're going to have to figure out what the consensus is on this.
Why don't we bring Ernest in next month and get his opinion and lean on him a little bit with this? I'll reach out to him and let him know what the discussion is. Let's put that on the next month agenda.
And if possession makes us not liable, or that's perfect. I read too much into that word.
And as we're discussing that, I think it would probably be wise, because I've looked through that lease agreement many times recently. I don't think there's anything in there in black and white that says you need to bring, if you want to transfer your lease agreement to another party, it needs to be brought before the commission at such and such time, so we can get it on the agenda to vote on it. Or maybe that needs to be included as well, whether that's an addendum in the lease or something that goes out every month or whatever. That's probably not a bad idea to include that as well.
If we go and look at the lease and we're going to talk about adjusting or changing anything in the lease, I know my personal opinion is hangars should go with aircraft. I understand that's not the rules, and so we're not doing it, but if you buy a boat, you get the first ride at that slip, and if you don't get that, if you don't want it, then so be it. But makes it really difficult to sell aircraft if you don't have a hangar to go with it, because our list of 80 is probably very similar to the list that they have in Fayetteville, as they have in Bentonville, as they have everywhere else. Everyone's looking for this. So it's always been that way at the airport, but I would even be open to saying you can transfer it. Maybe it's within a period of time and you come before the commission and we do that process. I know it hurts our list, and if I were sitting on that list, I would hate that. But we have our tenants, our current tenants that are paying us rent and our partners committed with us. And we have people on this list that sometimes change their phone number and don't tell us, and we know that they're working at all, we suspect that they're probably on all the lists at all the airports. I feel like the people that are there buying fuel, paying us rent, those people deserve a first right. So if we're going to talk on the lease and how we might adjust that, that would be something I would be for. So you might think on that, see if you feel the same, or I may be the lone guy, and if so, I will agree with whatever we decide. But it's got to be very difficult to sell an aircraft if you're going to buy this beautiful garage-kept aircraft and you're going to have to put it out there on the apron and watch it just deteriorate over time.
Well, and then if someone's looking at an aircraft outside of here, but then they know, well, here's one for sale within, I'm going to come buy that aircraft before I buy your aircraft because I can keep it on the airport grounds.
If I were buying a boat, it would be a consideration. If you can find a slip, it'd be a consideration to have a spot you could put it in. So I know that's different industry and it works different, but it's something I think we should talk through and decide how we feel on that. I mean, there's obviously the list is fair to people that are wanting a hangar, but it isn't fair to people that own planes and want to get rid of them.
What
won't be able to.
I'm not following your logic on that.
If I own an airplane and you want to buy it, but you know you're going to have to store it on the apron, you're less likely to buy it. It's going to make it hard for me to sell my aircraft. But if I own a boat and you want to buy it and you can keep the lease of the slip, it just moves right over. It goes, only thing it changes is ownership, not location of where the boat's housed. Versus this, we're changing all of those rules. Not all the rules, but the lease, you don't get the hangar with it.
But you're assuming that the people that are buying and selling are on the same location. That's probably very rare in what I've seen out there.
Yeah, I was
don't
going
know
to
what
say the
James
same
thinks
thing.
too, but-
Most people buy an airplane are usually out of the area. You're selling to somebody in Kansas City or St. Louis or Dallas or something like that.
Well, in that case, it wouldn't matter. The 30 days would expire and we'd open it up to the list. The people here in Springdale that are going to continue staying in Springdale, then maybe we put that in there and know that it's not going to be used very often. It'd make a difference. If I really interested right now in buying an aircraft and I know there's absolutely no way I could store it underneath a cover, I don't think I'd buy an aircraft right now. I'd drag my feet. Until hopefully something opened, and it doesn't look like that happens. They don't turn over that often.
But why would you penalize someone on the list that's been waiting however long they've been waiting over someone that just walks in off the street?
I agree. We're helping out the person that's currently renting from us, but they're not renting with us anymore because they're leaving the airplane. I get that. The people on the list are in 4 different lists, 5 different lists, who knows? I think there's pros and cons with both of them. I could see trying to sell a plane being very difficult without a hangar going with it. And we're not in the business of making it easy for people to sell airplanes. I'm not saying we should make it easy for people to sell them, but that was just, I think it's something we'll need to talk through if we're going to adjust the lease and look at opening that up and having it rewritten or adding new clauses to it. I think that's something I'd like to discuss. And I'm not adamant one way or the other on it. I think that's something we talk about because I do think that can be an issue.
So you also brought up kind of catering to the people that we have at the airport now. Those are our customers and all that sort of thing. So I do that when a hangar does come open. I look for somebody that maybe has a smaller one that might want to move up to a larger one. So I'll give them first priority, then I still have a hangar to rent to someone off of the list. That's the way I've been doing it for the last many years now.
I like that. It's a thought that I had walking in today, or was suggested to me walking in, is, and I don't know the expense or what this would be worth it because it gets complicated, but maybe even a website. Just pure transparency. Here's the list. Here's where you'll be if you'd like that type of hangar. You can look, so when people, instead of a list that you're maintaining, you got to call Laura, maybe there's a website that they can put their name on and they can look and see where their hangar list is now, so you can actually, so you don't feel like you're in the dark and you're like, wait a second, well, whose buddy is getting the hangars because I haven't moved on the list, when the truth is nothing's changed. It might be nice to show, I don't know how we would do that, or if there's, I don't know, maybe not a website, maybe I don't know. When we touch base with these folks, we certainly should update them. I don't know how we make it to where it looks clear, and I just don't feel like every time a hangar comes available, it's somebody getting it instead of, I know we're not doing that, but I think from a public standpoint, that'd be really nice to be able to see where you're at and how it's moving and what's not changed or what has changed.
Well, but they can see that, can they not? They can't see the list if they want to know where they are?
I get calls all the time. They call me and say, 2 years ago I was this number, what number am I today? And it's moved, just a couple for the most part. In all honesty, we've had like 5 hangars over the last 4 years. That's all we've exchanged. And a lot of that was moving people around, so that what became available was an open hangar for the most part, because I tried to move people up into something better for them.
Even that number, is that not does that not make you wonder about subleasing? 5 planes?
Yeah, that's why we started this
5
conversation
planes?
3 or 4 months ago.
We know what's going on. We got to figure out a way to detect it without you having to spend 6 hours to figure out every one of them, and then there'd be a reason for it. Or some complication, because everyone's going to have a story and a complication, and it's all buddy deal stuff, right? So we just got to figure out. There's more than 5 planes have been sold out there that are staying in hangars. I feel like I may be wrong, but that's obviously why we're looking at it. And I worry about the $500 that's going to somebody that's paying the $150. That's the real, like, advantage of the situation.
All right. Well, let's pick it back up next month with Ernest and get his thoughts on it and go from there. All right, any comments from commissioners? All right, thanks, everyone. We're adjourned.